Welcome to the next segment of the Mile High Business of Tick Summit. This has been amazing. One, all the people that are joining us live. Two, all the people that are continuing to join in, and all the content and information. I want to encourage you again, as you can see on your screen, if you want more referrals and you're not in the Mile High referral directory, add your practice to that so you can get more referrals. Number two, join us at Mile High Live. It's in June. It comes early. So come and join us at Mile High in June. And there's a registration link there. And again, if you want the replays of this and all the Mile High summits, we're doing that for a charitable donation to a nonprofit. It's a chiropractic research nonprofit, Epi Energetics. And we had the Philosophy Summit and the Science Summit and the Art Summit, and now the Business of Chiropractic Summit. If you want to get those replays, you can watch and listen to them all the time at Mile High Tick on your mobile device in your pocket, then grab that. I am very thrilled to have our next guest on this summit. He's someone who I really am influenced by and inspired by in terms of how much impact he's had on chiropractic and really is business savvy. So I'm so glad that he's on this summit. The one and only Ryan Rieder. He's a husband, father, and he's founded a multi-practice chiropractic practice in that group, had part founder, and had 9 practices. It actually was the largest system exclusively of chiropractic care in the UK. That's amazing. He's an excellent doctor and team member and CEO at founding teams and helping lift chiropractors up. It was the largest provider of chiropractic care. I think it was 3,000 visits a week between the 9 offices. So phenomenal businessman and soul and chiropractor, really dedicated people getting quality care. Thank you so much for taking your valuable time to visit with us today, Dr. Ryan.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. It's great to be on the call today, and looking forward to getting into it. We always have so much fun when we're on calls together, and I admire so much of what you're doing across there and how many people have registered this, and hopefully we can give them some cool value to serve more people, have more fun, be more abundant, and all those good things. So it's just awesome to be on the call.
And let's start with this. Let's people get to know you. How does someone South African end up in the UK running chiropractic offices? How does that happen?
Well, it's funny. I would love to tell you. Well, let's go right back. So, I'd love to tell you that there was this. When I first started in this chiropractic space and come to seminars, and I'd hear speaker after speaker go on stage and tell this amazing story that they had, and they were just it varies, but adjusted from birth or someone saved by chiropractic, and all these amazing stories. And I sat there feeling pretty guilty about myself, because the truth is I didn't have that story. I actually went to chiropractic college having never had a chiropractic adjustment.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard that before, but I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, and it's funny, wherever I speak in the world now, I kind of tell the story, and everywhere I speak in the world, there's a few people in the room that put up their hand and said the same thing. It's almost like this big weight has been lifted off their shoulders, And you know what? I so desperately wanted to have that story. I've been adjusted in birth, or had the epiphany, or had the life-changing, but it just wasn't my path. So I went to chiropractic college, finished chiropractic college. I was quite disillusioned about chiropractic when I finished. I think most people are when they finish chiropractic college. And then my wife was in our class, not wife at the time, but we were dating for a little while, and then we decided to come to the UK together. And then from there, I guess the real story is, I had my final year of chiropractic college. A lecturer looked me in the eye and say, "Are you sure you want to become a chiropractor? Because it's just so difficult to make it, or impossible." I was just talking from his experience.
Right.
And so I actually, when I got to the United Kingdom, I actually downloaded the application form for a postgraduate medical degree, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, and I had to fund this thing. I had, I could tell Natalie now we're going down the route of getting married and all those type of things, and I had to provide and all those things. So I just went to an interview, and my first interview really changed my life. I walked into practice. It was my first time I experienced open plan, and I spoke to the chiropractor said, just speak to people, and he was testing me. And I'll never forget the first patient that came to speak to me. and was a guy on a walking stick, and he was so excited about my career in chiropractic, and at that time more excited than I was. And he said to me, "Don't you ever let anybody have what I had." And he had a routine discectomy, partially paralyzed down one side, and it really bothered me at that very moment. We're talking to him. He had more at that very moment. It was I hadn't started working yet, but at the very moment he had more certainty in chiropractic than I did.
Yeah.
Because he had experienced the miracle and he experienced amazing changes, and I hadn't been even put in that environment yet, and that really changed my life, that one experience, because I fell in love with the energy. First, I fell in love with the energy of the practice, being open, it was open plan, etc. And then I fell in love with the stories, and then I got to witness the stories as a chiropractor, and that's really how. And then we started, and then I was 2 years as an associate, and then my wife and I always said we're going to do our own thing, and then we co-founded a group together with another business partner, and we grew our practice a year for 5 years. We added £1 million revenue per year for the first 5 years, and then we kind of stabilized about £5 million revenue per year. And I'm no longer involved in that group. I had a great journey, a 10-year journey there, and made so many mistakes. I was 26 when I started that business. Didn't know anything from anything, and I still feel like I am in many ways, but I learned a lot. And so that's the story, how I ended up growing that.
So associate, and then within 5 years, I think you had 8 offices. If that's in that time frame.
Yeah. So we went associate for 2 years, and then we went into co-founded a group, and then we went from 2 practices to 5 very fast, and then 5 to 8 so in 5 years we had grown to about 8.
Wow.
From about 2 or 3. So we added 1 practice a year, 1 practice a year, 1 practice a year for about 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
So £1 million revenue per year over that time.
Wow. So now with that, I know there's some wisdom that you have, lots of wisdom to share, and I've been to your programs and taken many of your programs, virtual, live. So can you say some things about just even going from associate to practice owner? So let's start there.
Yeah, I will. And I'm going to say a couple things that perhaps I think will be unspoken about in the industry. I'll say 2 things. One, if you're waiting to feel ready, you're never going to feel ready. Never going to happen. You're never going to be like, wow, I'm ready now. No, you're never going to feel ready. You will never gain the full skill set to open a practice prior to opening the place. They say some lessons have to be lived to be learned.
Right.
Opening a practice is very much like that. You'll never build the financial acumen. You just got to go do it, I do like the idea of people spending some time as an associate before they open first, because then I think you develop, you learn a lot. But when the business acumen, you just got to go do it, and you'll never feel ready. That's the first thing I'll say.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The next thing I'll say is I am of the opinion, and by the way, before I say this, when I owned practices, it was, of course, people would look in the inside and say, well, of course you'll say that you hire associates. And what I'm about to say, you'll hear now. But right now, I don't hire associates anymore. I'm not in that business anymore. So I have no gain in saying what I'm about to say. In fact, what I'm about to say was now a consult to practice owners, right? So what I'm about to say, there's no benefit for me about what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say is, I don't believe that every single person should own their own practice.
Right.
And someone in this house like, wow, what do you mean? I think we're one of the only industries in the world that the associate may feel less than. If you go to a conference, they go, where are the practice owners? Everyone puts up their hand, and the associates longingly look at all the practice owners, and one day I'm going to be there.
Right.
But I'm of the opinion that it's very well spoken about in business that not every single person should be a business owner. It's about being happy, right? And some people are just happier and earn more money. By the way, it doesn't naturally go hand in hand. I'm of the opinion that not every single chiropractor should own their own practice. That's like saying every single solicitor or lawyer or accountant. Some of the greatest accountants and lawyers on the planet have never owned their own firms.
Right.
So I'm quite critical of the industry of chiropractic for looking down on, we don't, but this, or this feeling that you haven't self-actualized until you open your own business, i.e. be a business owner. I just think it's nonsense, because I think you can serve amazingly, you can be happy, and and you bet, and for some people it is a better path for them. It's really about self-realization or self-awareness. It's a better path for them to follow the associate path. Now that doesn't float my and your boat, Danny, because we are entrepreneurs and we love that. But I'm really passionate about saying that now, is that I don't feel it's the right path for everyone, and they can still be happy, make amazing money, serve amazingly well, and be part of something bigger. It doesn't have to be open your own practice, but obviously it's horses for courses. So let me say that.
There's a very good point, because we're in a different chiropractic as an industry. We don't have many hospitals, right? So like every doctor is not going to be a good hospital CEO or a hospital owner or
Yes.
even a clinic owner. But,
Yeah.
we go into a healthcare profession because we want to do a healing art and we're enamored by it and we want to help people. And that doesn't necessarily equate to business strategies, is what you're
Well
saying.
said.
Yeah.
Well said. I just think it's so important to say, because I know that there's somebody watching this right now who perhaps feels like their path has been written for them, that they're not the chiropractor, the great chiropractor until they open their own practice. And I just think it is a ridiculous narrative in an industry that it's very well spoken about, that not every single person, it's very well accepted, not every single person should be a business owner, meaning that they'll be less happy if they're a business owner as opposed to other places, other positions. But in our industry, for some reason, we've got this narrative that you're only going to be successful or made it when you open your own practice. I just think it's a wrong narrative and sets people up for heartache, because some people should not own their own business one day. And by the way, I've got no benefit in saying this again.
Yeah, well, no, part of why we're doing this summit is, I'm sure you've seen these and heard these, and many have, where people are very passionate chiropractors. And this is part of why we're doing the summit. And then you see them doing something outside of chiropractic, from waiting tables to bartending to, I've seen serving hot dogs at a baseball game,
Wow.
and all kinds of things. And so, and then feeling like a failure, or that chiropractic failed them, or they failed chiropractic, but maybe they needed to have a successful model that they could plug into rather than own a business.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
and I've seen phenomenal chiropractors that failed in business, but then were part of a practice as a franchise or an employee or something that, or, that just thrived in that role, but they didn't do well as a business owner. So, yeah. So then let's go from that. So what are some keys for someone growing a stellar team? Because you've done that incredibly well. How do you grow a stellar team? Because I do know, whether you're the owner or not, you have to be a great team makes a great office, and being part of a great team. But how do you grow a great team?
I think it's again, the first thing. I'm so glad. It's such a good question, Danny. I think it's again something I think that's unspoken about. And let me give you the statistics of all this. If you look at all the businesses in America, and you look at the average number of employees that the average business, including the multinational corporations, have, how many would you guess, Dr. Danny? How many would the average business in America employ?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so it's 3.
Oh,
The average business in America only employs 3 people, and it's testament to how difficult it is. Again, it's underspoken about. You can go to, and marketing's important. Marketing's my thing. I love it. Marketing's important. Sales is important. It's all important. But the amount of businesses I'm working with right now, they can't grow because they can't build a team, outnumbers the amount of businesses that can't market or sell, especially in today's environment. Mm-hmm. I think it's the number one skill set that someone needs to learn. And then the marketing becomes easier, sales becomes easier, etc. if you have that skill set to hire and train a team. So I don't know if I have a golden nugget for you. And again, that's testament to how difficult it is. I'm still on the journey. I still make lots and lots of mistakes with hiring. As culture and hiring and firing and all those, and mess ups and all of those things. But I think that's the point of the answer to your question is, it is the hardest, it's the single hardest thing you can do in your business, is build a team, maintain a team, hold a team together, and deal with all the intricacies of that. People underestimate the difficulty in going from three employees. Let me give you an example. To simply go from 3 employees to 4 employees, everyone thinks, oh, well, it's just one extra hire. It ain't just one extra hire. To go from 3 employees to 4 employees, do you know that the complexity within the practice or business increases by a multiple of 300%?
Oh, wow.
Most people think it's 33% because it's, or whatever, it's just one employee. No, the complexity in the business increases by, I live on the back of my property overlooks a polo field, and they are mowing the polo field right now. So if you hear a noise, so that's just testament to how difficult it is to build a team. Remember, if you're going from 3 employees to 4 employees, be ready for a 300% increase in complexity, because change of communication change, meeting pulses change, you've got emotions, we've all got our own emotions and stuff going on at home and challenges, and then you've got a varied amount of complexity that's added. So the only thing I would say to you is treat it with the gravitas that it deserves, meaning it's damn hard. It's damn difficult. You've got many people's life in your hands. You've got their futures in your hands, and they're reliant on a paycheck at the end of the month. And ultimately, I have one rule. I guess here's my golden nugget, if there was one. The only rule I have is, and I will make many mistakes in between this, but the rule I have is, and I always say I sleep well at night if I can just fulfill this one thing with someone in my life coming to work for me, is my rule is this: everybody leaves better.
I love that.
Everybody leaves better. So I just go, okay, am I pretty confident that people coming into my environment left better? For me personally, I can say with hand on heart, yes. They learn good marketing skills and sales skills and strategies. And I always see myself as a bit of an exposer. I expose people to great chiropractors like yourself, and a varied amount of them, even many of the speakers on the summit have been involved with my associates, etc. So my role is a bit of a conduit, an exposer, and I'm like, am I going to sleep at night, put my head in the pillow going, is everybody leaving better? And I think that counts for a lot, I think that type of outlook counts for a lot in a team. So that's what I'd say. Treat it with the gravitas that it deserves. It's hard, and that if your intention is for everyone to leave better, I think you're down the right path.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it is one of the most difficult things, especially when you add more and more people. 1 to 2 is not as hard, but really good to know that information about 3 to 4 or 3 to 5. Or then if you then you have the complexity of adding another office from 1 to 2.
Yeah, listen, I'll be completely frank with you. A lot of people, especially in the beginning of my consulting, and especially from the United States, actually, people come to me all the time and go, I want to do what you did. I want to get to like $7 million or multiple practices. And I'm like, I'm like, nah, like how much, why don't you just double the practice and live an amazing life? And by the way, $1 million to $5 million is and depending on the industries, it's not a panacea, but depending on the industry and the variations, but specifically in a bricks and mortar business, 1 to 5 million can be what they call the desert. And the profit margins are not massively increased, but you need to double to really make sure the profit margins are much higher, because all of a sudden you have your financial directors at 6 figures, and you have your et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of the time, if you look at the skill set required to go to 10 sites or 20 sites or 5 sites, most people are better off just making sure they stick with a great coach, great marketing, great sales and service, and they'll double the practice they have and live an incredible life. That's not to be defeatist. I'm just saying statistically, to get to $5 million a year, I believe it's 1% of every business on the planet, including the multinational corporations, will ever achieve that. Yeah. And that doesn't automatically mean the profit is 10 times more than you at right. At a million or $1.5 million. It doesn't mean that you're going to make 10 times the profit when the business is at 10 million. It doesn't work that way. So often in our industry, we can live incredible lives and make amazing legacies for us and our families by running a office that's run very, very well. And we're blessed to be able to be in an industry where we can say that.
Yes. So important. And then the thing that happens is then with having a team and having 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, scaling, it's greater complexity. When you have greater complexity, like 2 offices to 10 offices, or 1 office to 2, or 1 team or 2, it's that you're making things more complex. So there's more to organize, which means there's more to adapt to, and there's more instabilities that can throw in your way. Once you and a chiropractor, there's less instabilities.
And the risk goes through the roof, by the way.
Yeah.
So not only that, is that your risk to reward profile or ratio is insanely changed, and most people are just not, they should not put themselves in that environment, or wouldn't be able to tolerate that level of risk, and shouldn't, in fact. So I've got a slightly different outlook on that, having been there myself.
Right. So now you want to double your practice. What are some things about the path to that?
Cool. Well, it's actually I think people overcomplicate this thing. I've had a change of heart in some aspects, because I'm a business owner, and I'm always learning. But I'd say, it's a bit of a cliche, but there's only 3 ways to grow a business. It's 1 is increase new customers or new patients. Number 2 is increase or pricing strategies, or increase the price per unit, or price per adjustment, or average price per client, or average case value, or variations of that. So number 1, new customers. Number 2 is increase price or pricing structure in some way, shape, or form. And number 3 is simply increase the amount of times that someone uses your service. In a chiropractic, we call that PVA, right? So that's it, really. I'm going to add a 4th to that I'm seeing become more and more relevant, and that is financial literacy, and knowing, like, it flabbergasts me how few people actually know their P&Ls and their balance sheets, and actually look at those things at the end of every month. And we're big on that in some of my consulting groups, and that's newish for me. I'm a relatively still young entrepreneur, and I've been running offices for now 12 years, etc. But that is we're quite good in chiropractic on attack being at marketing. There's lots of marketing conferences, and there's lots of day 1, day 2 conferences, and sales conferences, and the likes. But there aren't too many. Hey, let's learn how to look at your numbers and financial literacy conferences.
Right.
And the truth is, if they like a sport, if there was attack and defense, marketing, sales is attack, defense is HR, having a good solicitor, having great knowing your numbers, and having a CFO, or we have a fractional CFO in our business, and we're big on that. So that's a new one for me. So I'm going to add a 4th thing there. So it's increase number of new customers, increase amount, case value or price in some way, shape, or form, increase PVA, and the last one is have a defense. Actually know your numbers, and actually. So that's my 3rd one, and that comes not from me always doing it well, by the way. It comes from me making those exact mistakes in the financial department in my business career at times, not putting enough emphasis on financial literacy and understanding the numbers. So that's my short answer.
Well, and here's the thing. Even the numbers you're talking about, the financial literacy, there's also measuring the KPIs of just production in general. People don't even measure those.
No, they don't. We are. I wouldn't say it's in the industry. I wouldn't say it's not an industry problem. It's just a small business problem.
Well, it's true. Yeah.
We're just poor at it. And I'd say this: we also have bad relationship with setting goals, in that we feel less than or down on ourselves when we don't achieve the goal. But the lessons that come from not achieving the goal is what you're supposed to learn, so that you can eventually hit the goal. So you're not going to hit every goal. You're not going to achieve every number. And actually, when I speak to most people who had scorecards and KPIs every week or month, and when I ask them why they stopped, they often say to me they stopped because they felt bad about looking at bad numbers every single week or month. And I would argue that your next steps in your practice growth are directly reliant on you finding those bad numbers. If you're looking at numbers every single week, we all have multiple bad numbers in our business, by the way. I don't care if you're a $20 million business. There is a bad number that they should be seeking out so they can improve the bad number. For example, you may have a record week, but then your telephone stats of number of missed calls that week might be through the roof. As I say that, most people go, "Oh shit, but I'm not even measuring that." Well, let me tell you, if you will get the fright of your life if you've never measured how many missed calls or or calls are going to voicemail that your team's not getting during the day. If you never measured that, get ready for a big shock, because it's always a way.
And people don't realize that. I'll tell you, I'll admit this. We had a month where our collections dropped. I think it was 60,000.
Yeah.
And we couldn't figure out why. And it was like something had to go on that was huge. You're gonna love this, Ryan. It's you couldn't even make this up. We found out that our phones were actually not working. And nobody told us. They just said, "Wow, it seems like the phone doesn't ring too often."
Wow. No, and I say wow, because every person, okay, if anyone's watching this now and going, wow, I can't believe I haven't talked to Danny. I'm gonna say this to you. Most people listen to this right now just haven't found it.
Yeah.
It's like if you're sitting here watching this now going, "Oh, I'll tell you a story of me too," which is you'd look at it and say, "That's so dumb," but you'd go, "No, well, most. I was once taught this as a mastermind is you're just the only guy at the table who hasn't found it yet."
Yeah, well, yeah, and actually, we only found it because we hired a new web company, because we were blaming our website because we couldn't figure out what was going on, and then they said, "Well, there's no phone going," and they found it, instead of us. And we had not the best front desk person at the time, and they wanted to leave the job, so they were happy to not get phone calls. So like,
if I can, I'm going to tell you a story that happened with me exactly the same. We had and I subsequently have learned a good lesson of this. We've all had broken links on our website, but I missed 1,000. That's 1,000 leads. 1,000 leads because one link on the website was down. So we had huge traffic, right? There was for 8 sites. We missed 1,000 leads. We got them ready, but it was too late because we missed the opportunity. But one link in the website the tag was not coming across and dragging things across. And people were opting into, let's say it was a 50% off offer or a thing. And 1,000 people put that thing in, and we hadn't noticed that the link wasn't working. So my lesson for this, and if you listen, every time I teach what I'm about to teach, somebody contacts me and goes, "I can't believe it. You told me to do it. You've been telling me to do it for months or years, and I didn't listen. And then I did it 1 month, and I was shocked that I found it." So here's my lesson. I learned this from someone who helped us with the process. You should be opting in to every one of your forms on your website at least every month. Because I remember when we were trying to discover if this was working, it was so stupid. The consultant who was helping us said, "Well, it's simple. Have you opted in yourself?" And I was so simple that I hadn't thought, we were trying to find out, is it working? And he's like, no. So as a rule of thumb, if all you did was opt into every one of your forms, contact us form, offer form, inquire form on your website, and you do that once a month, I will guarantee you'll find a broken link at some point in the year, and it's going to save you thousands of dollars.
Or a thank you page that has the wrong date or something like that. I've had it. Look, we're on the Mile High Summit. I've had this Mile High where we're running ads, or we're spending money on it, and then the link in the ad went to a site that didn't have the security SSL, right? So then it was saying there's, not safe site, and because someone didn't put that part, right?
No, it's simple. So, and I think it's just gold. What we've just shared here. It's not that It's that one little tip that someone will look from the summit and go, "I watched an interview between Dr. Danny and Ryan, and now I get one team member is responsibility to opt into every form on our website, and I caught it, and we're done. Our job is done. More people are going to be served, So good luck.
But those are all part of running a business, and some of them were not part of running a business 20 years ago, but are part of running a business now because things change quickly, right? KPIs. What do you think are some important KPIs that people should monitoring regularly. I know someone's writing down, I'm going to check my web
Yeah.
URLs every day now. But
Yeah, well, I mean, at least have it in a
a month.
checklist and it gets checked a month, you know. But KPIs, okay, so you got the standards, you got collections, and you got services. There's a difference, you know, what money is taken versus actually what you've done as services in the business. I think at times we're too focused on collections from this standpoint. Accrual accounting means that, you know, we haven't performed the service yet. So depending on where you state where you practice in the world, you know, sometimes you have to put that in an escrow account, and some places you don't. The places in the world where you can take cash and not put in an escrow account is actually a worry for me, because people then spend the money and they haven't fulfilled the service yet. So I always worry about that huge focus on cash. Whereas don't forget the actual service is big, because I see those testimonies all the time. It took X amount of cash. We're like, yeah, you're still going to fulfill the service, so don't get too excited. So collections and services are two different stats. Average, then your weekly visits, your number of new patients per week, and then some extra ones that I would recommend are things like, for example, DNA. So weekly, also a lovely stat is DNA NFA. So did not arrive, but they've got no future appointment booked.
Ah.
So who this week or who last week did not attend the appointment and has no future appointment booked? That's a huge red flag. So they didn't pitch the call and didn't pitch to the consults or the adjustment, and they got no future appointment booked. You should have a substantial sequence of events that needs to happen for that customer, because that's like most risk of dropping out. You know, it's different if they DNA they did not arrive, but they got a future appointment booked. You still want to have a sequence to get them back on schedule, but it's not as critical as a DNA NFA. Did not arrive and no future appointment booked. Then other things might be number of no-shows at first appointment, number of no-shows for reported findings. You might want to look at telephone answer rate. We like to keep it about 90%, and you can do that. Most VoIP telephone systems now can give you reports and how many calls came to the office and didn't get answered. You know, within 3 visits, they can even do things like 3 rings, non-answers. That's another one. And then you need to go, and then in each section you're going to have to go more granular. But what they call the true definition of a scorecard is if you're deserted if you're on a desert island or stranded on a desert island, what are the 5 to 7 numbers to 10 you need to look at to ascertain whether the business is functioning healthily. So those are some pretty good ones. You know, collections, services, weekly visits. I've got another one for you now. Then you've got rolling 6-month PVA, and then one more that almost everyone overestimates is what is your average visit fee for the week. Mm-hmm. So that is taking into account all your discounts built into your care plans, all that. You get 500 visits this week. The service, if for example your a la carte adjustment fee is $70, but because they took a care plan, they're actually paying $50 an adjustment. I'm just throwing these numbers out of thin air. Then that will be the service, and then you can look. That's the average visit fee actually across their care plan. So then for last week, what is the average visit fee per visit? That is normally as much as $10 less than most people think it is. Everyone overestimates it and thinks it's higher than it is because they're focusing on the collections. But your average visit fee, what is that for the current month? So now, I mean, I'll go through them all again. You could go through them all again, but you should have enough there to ascertain how the business is doing.
And a lot of people, I mean, don't measure any of those other than collections and visits. Just we collected this much and this many visits. Very commonly, probably more common than you and I want to know.
No.
What people track, but it's a norm, unfortunately. So and it comes back to making sure you're running a business and not a hobby, and also that what you measures grows, but what you measure and is reported grows exponentially. And when things aren't reported by your team, you know, then they're not going to be accountable to it. And the chiropractors tend to have a horrible problem with accountability. So
yeah, and let's flip it on its head, and just one last closing point there
Yeah.
is, you're not looking for good numbers, guys. I want you to look for bad numbers. So it's like, I don't want to, because I can feel it. I can feel it. I don't want to look because they know what they're going to find. They're going to find the bad numbers. That's the point. The point is for you to find the bad numbers, because I can play. Listen, my 4-year-old daughter can tell me how great I am. Daddy, you're amazing. I can do that too. Dr. Danny, you can do that too. The point is for you to look at the numbers where it's bad, so that you can improve upon it. You understand? Yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so it was like,
Now just so you know, Ryan, your teenage turtle will have no problem telling you how bad you are.
but the point is, like, I could see them feeling, I don't know if I don't want to look at that number, even if you don't say it, because it's going to be bad. That's the point. Good comes from looking at bad numbers.
And I say this clinically to people when I'm training people, because I train people clinically, that they don't want to look at outcomes like instrumentation or X-ray, because what if the person doesn't change, right? Because versus that, you actually, when the person doesn't change clinically at what you're looking at, that's when you get to grow as a chiropractor, because you get to just grow your skill sets of saying, well, what am I doing wrong taking care of this person? How can I get better? Versus
I hadn't heard it. I hadn't heard in that context before, but it's brilliantly put.
Yeah,
I really like that.
And people, versus because they don't want to look at the bad scans, and I don't want to show the patient. Look, no medical doctor is hiding from the fact that there's a bad finding on a thing, and they're not taking it personally. They're concerned about who? The patient. This is a bad lab value. You got to know this. They're not telling you. They're going to think I'm a bad medical doctor because the lab value is bad. They don't think that.
Right.
Right? So here's the thing, but chiropractors think that because we have, it's self-worth and ego and accountability. So, and same thing with the numbers, so it's a business area. So how do people get more connected with you, Ryan Rieder? Because I love receiving your stuff. I love your classes. They help me tremendously. So how do people learn more from you?
Yeah, okay, there's a couple ways. You can obviously go on Facebook and have a look for me. It's Ryan, and surname Rieder. And then if you go to dcpracticegrowth.com, and you can fill in a form there, you can get one of my free books. You just pay for shipping. I've got a new sales book coming out in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm actually working on it for 2 years, actually. And it's the best. Every time I had a cool research into it, and psychology of selling research, and we worked very close with Robert Cialdini. Actually, we paid him to come in and consult with us and speak to my inner circle group. If you haven't read the famous book Influence, you should. Some of his research is in there, and I'm just really excited to teach more about it. And actually, in the book, I summarize about 6 typical sales personalities I see in chiropractors, and it's a fun little piece. And you'll often either notice a colleague or yourself in there, and when you read it, you'll laugh at it and learn a lot as well. So if you go to dcpracticegrowth.com, I'll be on that. And then I actually have which if you're on my email, and then just fill in for my regular details. But I've got an email list, and I'm coming across to the States in July, actually. I'd say the best place to start is grab on my free books. All you do is pay for shipping. I think it's $7.95. And I've got a book on how to deliver lunch and learns, and dinner with the docs, and all those type of things. And they've got a book on how we generated 10,000 new patients every single year through my multiple sites. There's all the strategies in there. We just give it all to you. And then another book coming out in the next 4 to 6 weeks, which is a sales and day 1, day 2 book. So I'd go to dcpracticegrowth.com.
Oh, definitely grab those. dcpracticegrowth.com. Everything. I haven't consumed all of your content, but everything, the new patient avalanche, things that I've done, revolutionized my practice. It really helped me dial in things that I was blind to. So I cannot recommend enough. And I'm glad that you took your time to be part of this. Another question to ask before we wrap up. One of the things I've seen you do really well, if you are in that upper growth area, either because you have different associates and you're doubling a practice into more visits and more days, or you're going into that second or third office, how do you stay in that CEO position versus getting wrapped up into the doing?
again, like I love teaching in this context of, I'm super transparent with anyone that consults me, is, I'm a business owner myself. So I'm going to start by saying, with difficulty, with difficulty, it's hard. Two things I'd say is, one is, remember, I had a real challenge toward the end of last year in one of my businesses, and we uncovered some fraud in one of my businesses. A financial director, and had been naughty and dipping into the cookie jar, as they would say, and I learned some amazing lessons from it.
Wow.
And I took the opportunity to have lunch or a meeting with some very, very, very successful people. I mean, there was a guy I know him well, but he was 27, earning a million pounds a month, right? At 27, and he was just a phenomenal phenomenal entrepreneur. And every single person I spoke to had these stories like I'd had, whether it was like, they'd lost something, or they made a stupid investment, or they had fraud, or someone steal. Every multi-millionaire, it's had some challenge along the way, and every single one of them kind of referenced that the lesson I learned from it was that I would get harder, and one was like, I'd get a bit harder with business, and I might get a little bit stricter with certain regiments, and the other one, every single one of them said to me, was that you'll also learn that there's certain things in the business that you have to do. So it was interesting. Every time I had lunch with one of these people towards the end of last year, I would say things like, well, you don't do that, do you? And they were like, well, who else would? For example, there's a guy, he's a big YouTube star, and he's got like 4 or 5 videographers. And I said, well, when you shoot something, you don't actually go through the final editing. And he's like, it's my business, who else would? And I was like, no, you actually edit it yourself. And he's like, yes, dude. He's like, and he's a 7-figure per month earner. And I really caught a wake-up call when it comes to the following. So how do you get caught in the minutia? I'm going to give you contrarian advice. My contrarian advice is, I believe that the books like, everyone references this book as being a famous business book. What's the book written by? The E-Myth. Forgive me, that's the tractor coming from. The E-Myth spoke about everything needs to be cookie cutter, but that was written in an industrial era. So it was for everyone had a factory, and you could churn out factories. Well, if you've tried to hire millennials, you'll know it doesn't go that well. So we have to change, and we have to adapt, and we have to millennial file our business in some way, right? So when you're in trouble, lean on tools. So how do you not get caught in the minutiae? Number one is, you will have to have regular meetings, and you have to get good at to-dos and carrying accountability in the to-dos. Now, if you're the visionary of the business, you would typically not like to take too many to-dos or take too many like big, what they call rocks in a quarter. You'll make sure they delegate it out. That's one way, but you do need to be at the meeting to make sure that the do's are happening. You'll design the whole thing. So that's one way to not get caught in the minutiae. And then most very successful chiropractors and most very successful people have a right or left hand, woman or man. And we call that in the business structure, that could be an operations person or an integrator. And there's some amazing books on that. So first of all, how do you get not pulled into the minutiae with difficulty? It is a skill set you've got to learn. You've got to have structure. You've got to have regular meeting pulses. You've got to have a structured weekly meeting, not just a, hey, let's get together and chat. There's a itinerary for it, which we teach. There is a itinerary for a quarterly, which we teach, and there's itinerary for an annual. If you do a weekly, a quarterly, and an annual meeting correctly, and you set targets and budgets and divvy out the to-dos, and you don't take them, that's one way to get not caught in the minutiae. But that is a very difficult skill that most people can't get to. And you don't go to, I mean, when's the last time you went to a chiropractic conference and they say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do a weekly meeting? But like, what else should we, like, why do we not teach that?
Because you're there for the magic script.
And I always, well, you know what I like to say, and I like to say this. If a script was going to save us, do you not think we would have found it by now? Because there's no shortage of people willing to sell it to you.
Right. Yeah.
But
Totally.
but in the same breath, scripting is important, but there ain't a magic one.
Right. Right.
Anyway, so we could go
Well,
down that rabbit
and
hole.
yeah, and as our mutual friend and Liam Schubel, he often says in his presentations, "Without a script, you suck." But there's not a magic one.
And I agree with him. I
Yeah.
agree with him. But you wouldn't want to go in unscripted.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if there was a magic one, do you not think we would have found it by now? There's
Right.
no
Right.
shortage of people willing to
Well,
say
yeah,
it.
because you would all be 10 offices that are $10 million in income, right?
Exactly. There ain't one. I'm just going to break it to you gently. There's no magic one. Um, but you
well,
should be
well,
saying that it should be scripted.
I want to thank you for being part of the summit. Truly, anytime you spend with Ryan Rieder, I found anytime I spend with Ryan Rieder, and you'll find this too, is time well spent. You'll learn something. You'll learn many things, and maybe some things that you didn't want to learn, or didn't think you wanted to learn.
Yeah,
And is there any last message you'd like to share with people?
No, listen, all I've got to say is business is hard. Life is challenging at times. Relationships are difficult, etc. And you think, oh, wow, you sound like a pessimist, Ryan. No, what I'm trying to do is don't be too tough on yourself. It's what you're doing. If you look at the percentages of people that will ever, by the way, go look at the percentages of people that will ever make $1 million in a year net. It is so minuscule. It's so tiny. I believe I think it's less than 1% of people will ever make $1 million in a year. Net, keep $1 million a year. And then we throw out things like, I want to make $1 million a year. Well, you know what? It may take you some time to get there, but I'd be quite cool for most people on this call right now. If you're making $500,000, you'll be okay with that. So net. So it's approach it with a certain level of gravitas that deserves business, and be crazily optimistic at the same time. But don't be too hard on yourself, because business, if it was so easy, everyone would be doing it. Business is a challenging thing, and you're going to learn, you're going to make mistakes, but stick with it because it is totally learnable. Mm-hmm. So that's my final message.
And that's also important. So, next segment for the summit's coming right up. And I want to thank you, Ryan, for sharing, and also all the gifts that I've engaged with you with in terms of your online programs and your books, because they're so valuable in your inner circle. And I cannot recommend enough learning more from Ryan. You'll learn quite a bit. And thank you everyone for being part of this summit. The next segment of the summit is coming right around the corner here. So stay engaged. And again, we want you to be here live with us throughout the summit. And if for some reason you're having to miss segments, grab the replay so you can. And it's supporting chiropractic research through Epienergetics foundation.org. But you can grab that too. And we look forward to seeing people at Mile High Live in just around a little month and a half. So thank you again, Dr. Ryan Rieder, and thank you everyone for being part of the summit.